It's been raining for the last few days, and it's made the weather outside pretty chilly. But you know what? I secretly love it. It just puts me in the mood to curl up on the couch with a big bowl of stew. And even though my husband and I are both meat lovers, there are times where you just want to take advantage of the bountiful seasonal vegetables available. So after going through my fridge, I knew it was time to make autumn vegetable stew with cheese toast. It's satisfying, comforting, and hearty. Plus there's cheese involved, so what could be bad with that? Let's go inside and I'll show you how to make it. We're gonna start off with the autumn vegetable stew first. And the ingredients for that are an onion, garlic, a carrot, celery, a sweet potato, an eggplant, a zucchini, a bell pepper, a can of chickpeas, crushed red pepper flakes, dried thyme, a can of whole peeled tomatoes, and vegetable or chicken broth. There's something just so magical about onions, garlic, carrots, and celery when they hit the pan. So we're just slicing up the onion, but don't worry about it being paper thin because that's not important. The garlic. I don't know what's going on here, but I have gigantic pieces of celery and carrot. I think this is a bit large, so I'm just gonna do that. And as you can see here, I'm actually not cutting them into little microscopic thin pieces. I'm kind of leaving them chunky because in a stew, you kind of want to see those big pieces and you don't want to see them disintegrate too fast. If you don't like celery, just leave it out. I think it adds a nice flavor to it, kind of like a slow-cooked, home-cooked taste. This is your flavor base. It's like your aromatics. And then chop up your gigantic carrot. Again, don't worry about it being nice little fancy thin pieces because you're not going after that. If this was a soup, you could make this into a soup technically. Just add more broth and it'll be a soup. But for stews, I like it nice and chunky. So the pot is preheating with a little bit of olive oil, about 2 tablespoons. And then we grab our aromatics, put them all in together, including the garlic. Give it a little stir. And be careful because the garlic can burn. And you don't want that. That could ruin the taste of your stew. And it's important to layer every single vegetable with salt and pepper. The salt also draws out the moisture from the vegetables, so it allows it to kind of sweat, and then the garlic won't burn. Instantly, it smells like heaven. So welcoming. And make sure your heat's like about medium high. You don't want it too high. Now, as we let this sweat, I'm just gonna stir it occasionally. I'm gonna move on to chopping the rest of my vegetables. So we're just gonna chop it and add it to the pot. I'm telling you, because of the onions, celery, carrot, and garlic, it already smells like Thanksgiving in here. It's like a flavor base for everything. And speaking of Thanksgiving, I guess that's why I wanted to buy a sweet potato. But if you didn't have a sweet potato, use a regular potato or even any kind of winter squash that you want. That would be really good in here too. The key is to get something with a little bit more body, and it'll help thicken the stew up a little bit. So I just peeled the sweet potato, and now we're just gonna cut them into big chunks. So you start out with the sweet potato first because that takes the longest to cook. So that's what you want to do. Whatever takes the longest to cook, you chop up first and then you throw it in. And like I said, make sure you season every single layer that goes into the pot with the salt and pepper, because that will literally make or break the taste of your stew. Next, we have an eggplant. At least, well, I have an eggplant. And it's washed, but we're not going to peel it because I do like the color of the skin. Eggplants act kind of like a sponge, so they just soak up all the flavor. They also extrude a lot of water and they shrink down. So it's okay to make them kind of big. So in they go. Again, salt and pepper. To be honest, I don't think eggplant really adds that much to the flavor of this stew. So it's not completely crucial. So again, if you don't have it or you don't like it, then you can omit it. I think the eggplant kind of reminds me of something meaty, so I think it works really well in this dish, especially if you want to keep it vegetarian. Next, we have a zucchini. And again, I don't really know what was going on at the market the day that I bought my veggies, but they were all just so huge. If you didn't want to use zucchini, again, you can use yellow squash. Okay, plop them in. Salt, and pepper, and a stir. You know the drill by now. Did I mention it's important to use a big pot because it's going to start overflowing in the beginning, but everything shrinks down. Also, I'm using like a ton of vegetables because I want to, but you can simplify this and just use like 2 different kinds, 3 different kinds, or even use less vegetables. I'm just trying to use up what I have. Lastly, we have a bell pepper. I'm using yellow because I think that it just balances out with all the different colors that are in the pot. And peppers don't really take that much time to cook, so that's why we put them in last. And the last thing you're gonna do is open up a can of chickpeas. You just have to rinse and drain them because they're fully cooked, and then you just add them in. So the chickpeas are drained, rinsed and drained. And like I said, they're fully cooked, so you don't really have to worry about them too much. At this point, I'm gonna grab a teaspoon of your spices. Now I'm using dried thyme. You can of course use fresh, or you can use any kind of dried herb that you have on hand. I think oregano in particular would be really good with this because there will be tomatoes in there. Have a nice little Italian flavor to that. The herbs though are important. I think it just brings it out to life. If you don't have any herbs at all, it kind of tastes flat, so I recommend getting some kind of herb. Even fresh basil would be really good in here. And then my secret ingredient of choice, crushed red pepper flakes. I pretty much add it to everything. I mean, who am I kidding, really? Just grab the lid and set your timer for about 10 minutes and go do some other stuff while you're waiting for it. While we're waiting for the stew, I just preheated my broiler for the cheese toast. And we're gonna do something fun. You put the whole can of tomatoes with their juice into a larger bowl, and then with clean hands, you just break them apart gently. This is not the time for aggression, because if you squeeze really hard, you'll squirt yourself in the eye. I'm not saying that I know that from experience. And of course, if you want to skip this step, just use diced tomatoes. But I feel like that this not only has a better flavor, but they also look more rustic and country-ish and homemade. So it looks like your stew has been cooking for a really long time when it hasn't. Okay? Wash my hands. Okay, it's been 10 minutes and I've been stirring it occasionally. Woo, facial. And I don't know if you can see, but I mean, you know how like chefs on TV are always like, oh, I wish you could smell this. But like, seriously. So we're gonna add all of our tomatoes and their juice in here, as well as a cup of vegetable broth. Now I'm only using a cup because the whole point of this is for it to be a stew, not a soup. So you want there to be some liquid, but not a whole bunch. You want it to be nice and chunky and concentrated in flavor. And if you didn't have vegetable broth, or you didn't mind it not being vegetarian, feel free to use chicken broth, because I think most people usually have that on hand. Give it a stir, and then we're gonna cover it again and cook it for a few more minutes, just until some of the liquid has absorbed and all of your harder vegetables are soft and tender. Now we can get our cheese toast ready. The last thing you want to do is make your cheese toast right before you're about to eat. And all you need for that are cheese, bread, and a garlic clove. And I just cut up a French loaf. You can use French or Italian. And depending on how many people you want to feed and how many pieces of bread you want, you can either use 1 or 2 loaves. Mine came in a set of 2 and they were pretty small, so I'm going to use probably 2 in the end. But just for now, because it's just for me to take a taste, I'm just gonna make 2 pieces of toast, but really you can just make all of them at once. And we're just gonna pop this into the broiler just so they get a little bit toasty on the tops.
It's just sometimes I can't tell them apart.
Dunzo. Now while the bread is still hot and toasty on the top, you're just gonna get a garlic clove and cut off a tip of it and just rub it. The first time I told this method to my mother-in-law, she was completely skeptical and was like, there's no way that this is gonna make the bread taste like garlic bread. But believe me, it does. And then this is the cheese that I grated in advance. I'm using Monterey Jack, and this melts beautifully and has great flavor. A little bit of black pepper on top. It doesn't need any salt. And we're gonna pop it back into the broiler. But remember, this is gonna be the last minute step. So let's check on our stew first to make sure that it's done. I mean, I could smell it from here and I think it's done because it's like, It's percolating away. See, there's still some liquid in here. It's not completely evaporated and you don't want it to be. And actually, if you have leftovers the next day, you'll be surprised at how much that liquid evaporates overnight in your fridge. So I'm gonna give it a taste to double check for seasoning. I'm gonna cover it, turn it off, and pop the toast back under the broiler until the cheese melts. I'm just gonna serve myself a little in a mug because what's better than eating stew from a mug? And I'm gonna grab some cheese toast. I mean, really, this is just the perfect thing this time of year. I'm just gonna go curl up on the couch. The flavors are bright and balanced. And because of that red pepper, it's a little bit spicy too, which I like. And I think this would be great if you had a cold. Clear those sinuses right up. Taste a piece of cheese toast. This is perfect sit on the couch, watch a movie kind of dinner. Well, let's talk about some substitutions. And in case you didn't want any of these vegetables that I put in there, go ahead and use whatever you want. And for the meat lover in you, if you really, really, really need it, just add some chicken or sausage. but honestly, I don't think you need it. And if you want it to be a little bit heartier, then add a little bit more broth and some small pasta and cook it right in there. And it'll be kind of like a noodle vegetable stew, which would be amazing. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching this video. So if you enjoyed it, then remember to push like, leave a comment below, and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Seriously, you need to make this right now. I love cheese. Don't you?